Imagine waking up one morning and discovering that your money has lost 20% of its value. Not because you spent it, not because you invested badly, not because someone stole it, but because your own government quietly made it worth less. No emergency alert, no breaking news, no official announcement saying, "We're making you poorer today." Instead, prices slowly creep higher. Your grocery bill doubles, rent becomes unbearable, saving money feels pointless, and somehow, you're working harder than ever, yet getting further behind. Here's the disturbing part. This isn't always an accident. Sometimes, it's a feature of the system. Governments don't usually tax you only through income tax. There are quieter methods, hidden methods, methods that most people never notice, methods that transfer wealth without most citizens realizing it. And once you understand how they work, you'll never look at money the same way again. Level 1. The invisible tax nobody votes for. Most people believe taxes only come from paychecks. Income tax, sales tax, property tax, fuel tax, but there's another tax, one that's rarely discussed. Inflation. Think about this. If you earned $1,000 10 years ago, you could buy far more than you can today. The money looks the same, but its purchasing power has quietly disappeared. That's inflation, a silent reduction in your wealth. Governments often argue that moderate inflation is healthy, and they're not entirely wrong. Small inflation encourages spending and investing. But excessive inflation? That's where problems begin. Let's imagine a country prints billions of new dollars. At first, nothing seems different. Banks have more money, governments can fund more projects, people feel richer. But then, more money begins chasing the same number of goods. Businesses respond by raising prices. Food becomes expensive. Housing becomes expensive. Transportation becomes expensive. Eventually, everyone needs more money just to maintain the same lifestyle. The cruel irony? Those closest to newly created money often benefit first. Everyone else pays later. Economists even have a name for this: the Cantillon effect. It explains why the people who receive newly created money first, usually governments, banks, large corporations, and major investors, benefit before prices rise. Meanwhile, ordinary workers receive the money last. By then, everything already costs more. It's like arriving late to a sale, except every price has already increased. The wealthy often own assets, stocks, real estate, businesses. Those assets usually rise alongside inflation, but ordinary people, they mainly own cash. Cash slowly melts in value without making a sound. Level 2. Debt, the government's favorite tool. Here's something that sounds strange. Governments actually like debt, not because debt is good, but because debt gives them options. Almost every major economy owes enormous amounts of money. Trillions. Sometimes more than their entire economy produces in a year. The obvious question becomes, how do you repay that? One answer is higher taxes. Another is spending cuts. But both are politically unpopular. There's another option: inflation. Imagine owing someone $1 million. Now imagine inflation cuts your money's purchasing power in half. Technically, you still owe $1 million, but those dollars are now worth much less. Inflation quietly reduces the real value of debt. Governments know this. History shows it repeatedly. After World War II, many countries carried enormous debt. Years of moderate inflation gradually reduced its burden. The debt remained. Its real value shrank. Unfortunately, your savings shrink too. People who save cash lose purchasing power. People who own appreciating assets often come out ahead. The system quietly rewards borrowers and quietly punishes savers. Most people never notice. They simply wonder why saving no longer seems enough. Level 3. Why your salary can't keep up. Have you ever received a raise only to feel exactly as broke? There's a reason. Inflation doesn't wait for your employer. Prices adjust almost immediately. Salaries often don't. Imagine inflation reaches 8%. Your company gives you a 4% raise. Congratulations, you actually became poorer. Your paycheck grew, but your purchasing power shrank. This has happened repeatedly across the world. Workers celebrate raises. Months later, they realize groceries, utilities, fuel, healthcare, and housing rose even faster. Real wages fall, living standards decline, yet the numbers on the paycheck look bigger. This creates an illusion. Humans naturally focus on nominal numbers. Bigger salary, bigger bank balance, bigger paycheck. But wealth isn't measured by numbers. It's measured by what those numbers can actually buy. This explains why previous generations often bought homes on a single income, while many families today struggle with two. Income increased, expenses increased faster. The result? People work longer hours, take on more debt, delay retirement, and wonder where prosperity went. Level 4, the asset game. Most people never learn. Here's where the wealth gap begins. The rich understand one important rule. Money is not the goal. Assets are. Cash loses value over time. Assets often gain value. Consider two people. Sarah saves $100,000 in cash. David buys productive investments, stocks, rental property, businesses. Over 10 years, inflation quietly reduces Sarah's purchasing power. Meanwhile, David's investments may rise with economic growth. Companies increase prices. Property values climb. Rental income grows. The gap widens, not necessarily because David worked harder, but because he owned productive assets. Look back through history. Periods of inflation often create surprising winners. Homeowners, business owners, shareholders, commodity investors. Meanwhile, people relying solely on wages often struggle the most. This isn't about blaming governments. It's about understanding incentives. Governments aim to stimulate economies. Central banks aim to avoid recessions. Businesses aim to maximize profits. Investors aim to preserve wealth. You need to know which side you're standing on, because standing still often means moving backward. Level 5. Can you escape the system? This is where many documentaries end, with fear, but that's not useful. Understanding the system matters more than fearing it. The goal isn't to predict every economic crisis. The goal is resilience. History offers important lessons. People who continuously invest in productive assets often outperform inflation over long periods. That doesn't mean every investment succeeds. Markets crash, real estate falls, businesses fail, but productive assets generate value. Cash doesn't. Diversification also matters. Successful investors rarely bet everything on one idea. They spread risk. They keep learning. They increase their earning power. Because your greatest investment isn't always the stock market. Sometimes, it's your own skills. The person earning scarce, valuable skills usually has greater pricing power. They negotiate better salaries, build businesses, create multiple income streams. Inflation hurts everyone, but it doesn't hurt everyone equally. Knowledge changes outcomes. Financial education changes outcomes. Ownership changes outcomes. The world's wealthiest families understand something simple. They spend money differently. They save differently. They invest differently. And perhaps most importantly, they think differently. Conclusion: the real cost of staying uninformed. Governments don't wake up every morning trying to make citizens poorer. Many policies are created to solve real problems: recessions, wars, financial crises, unemployment. But every policy has consequences, and those consequences don't affect everyone equally. Inflation, debt, currency expansion, asset appreciation. These forces quietly reshape wealth every single day. Some people understand them and position themselves accordingly. Others ignore them and slowly lose purchasing power year after year. The biggest danger isn't inflation or taxes or government debt. It's financial ignorance. Because the moment you understand how money actually moves, you stop playing the game blindly. You stop measuring wealth by the size of a paycheck. You start measuring it by ownership, by assets, by skills, by long-term thinking. The system isn't perfect, but it is predictable. And history has shown one lesson again and again. Those who only earn money spend their lives chasing inflation. Those who own productive assets give their money a chance to outrun it. The question isn't whether governments will keep changing the economy. They will. The real question is this: will you continue reacting to those changes, or will you finally position yourself ahead of them?